Hi, welcome to Splash of Sanity. And today I'd like to talk about our emotional set points and where we are in our emotional state and what we're paying attention to and giving not only our thoughts to, but what kind of attachment are we giving to our thoughts that we have? How is it affecting us? And today I'd like to give you a real-life example of a grief set point that I experienced years ago when I was much younger. When I was 22 years old, my son was born. It was such a joy to have this new baby in my life. My marriage, however, was not going well. There were a lot of problems, even just that first year before our son was born. And it was a difficult year. And when my son was 5 weeks old, my mother passed away unexpectedly. And she was younger than I am now. And it was so unexpected, and having this newborn baby and being a new mom, first time mother, and not so great marriage. I found out my husband was an alcoholic, and just all these surprises. And I think I maybe have had a little postpartum depression after the baby was born, even though I was joyful and excited about it. But then when my mother passed away, I went into this state of grief. It overwhelmed me so much that I could hardly focus on anything else, and it didn't really contribute to my marriage situation and, having to handle being a new mom and going back to work full time. And so this grief set point that I had created in my life, because I just focused and dwelled on nothing but these things that had gone wrong, it really flavored my experience for the next couple years. And like I said, although I was loving being a new mom and everything, it's just like anything you can imagine started happening. My husband and I split up. We had a horrible, nasty custody case in North Carolina, and that summer the legislation had met and decided that everybody that wanted to have a custody case to be heard, they were going to give joint custody. So it was a really difficult time to have a 2-year-old and have this, back and forth. It just felt very chaotic, and it felt very stressful. It matched everything surrounding the rest of my life at that point. When my son was about 2 years old, about a week after his second birthday, my ex-husband, he and I were divorced already, he was supposed to have my child for 2 days, and instead they disappeared. And I didn't see him again for quite a while. And once again, I went back to that grief set point. I was still in that same vibrational set point that had seemed to be my norm. I mean, it had almost become such a familiar territory. It was not a surprise to me of how I felt all the time. That was around the end of May, and I really didn't have a leg to stand on with the legal system. So in July, I drove 7 hours to talk to a psychic. As a last resort, because we had joint custody, I couldn't get any help from the city, the police department, the state department, the FBI, the SBI, the county sheriff, you name it. I tried everything, and I didn't have a leg to stand on. I didn't have any rights as a mother because we had joint custody. So in July 4th weekend, I drove 7 hours to go to this psychic. And this grief was so overwhelming that I was experiencing. I couldn't function. I had to quit my job. It affected everything in my life. But when I spoke with this man, and we spoke for over 2 hours, and he not only told me where my son was, but he told me when I would get him back. He told me where they were. He told me events that had gone on while they had been missing. And we ended up talking about a lot of other things too, but it was after that, driving back home, that I felt a shift in my set point. Although I was still grieving, and although I was still heartbroken and basically stunned by everything, and almost in shock, a walk around the world shock, because of my meeting with the psychic and because of the hope that he gave me through that, I was able to shift my set point from hopeless to hopeful. And I went from despair to anticipation maybe, or some encouragement, or just some hope. And it was just in that shifting within myself, emotionally, going from hopeless to hopeful, that was just enough shift to be able to bring about some things in my life, changes in my life that felt better. It was almost as if I made peace with where everything was once I had confirmation from this man. And then I could begin to move forward with a whole different set point vibrationally. I began to have hope, to feel more alive. I began to feel like there was going to be something good was going to come. I was going to get my child back. I hoped and prayed. I had hope. So, although our thoughts don't necessarily predict what's going to happen in our life, the things that our emotions that we attach to our thoughts most certainly do. Those are the things that determine what our life experiences are going to feel like. And that's just one example of where I was in the middle of grief and how everything that surrounded my life experience kept having that same flavor of that set point where I was emotionally. Everything's frequency, everything's vibration. When we think about things long enough, they turn into a belief. And our beliefs, when we think about those long enough, and we have such strong beliefs, and if they're emotionally charged, they show up in our life, and then we say, see, there, I told you that was true. There it is. It's everything that we feel affects the outcome of the rest of our experiences. So I challenge you today to turn off the news. Quit focusing on your limitations. Quit focusing on the things that you're emotionally charged about in a negative way, in ways that don't make you feel comfortable. And spend most of your intentional time looking at things and giving attention to things that make you feel good. Things that you can appreciate. Things that bring you joy. I guarantee you your life will change.